The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Thomas Ellery stood at the edge of the grave, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his eyes fixed on the wooden casket being lowered into the earth. The priest spoke words he couldn't hear, something about peace, about mercy, about a life taken too soon. But all Thomas could think about were the 5 names carved into the worn leather journal tucked beneath his arm. Names he would never forget. Names he would make sure the world remembered. He had loved her more than life itself. And now there was nothing left but justice. In the quiet town of Brookridge, nestled between rolling hills and whispering pines, lived a man named Thomas Ellery. He was a modest mechanic with calloused hands and a heart as soft as his daughter's laughter. Her name was Emily, 16 years old, with dreams as wide as the sky and eyes that sparkled like morning dew on grass. Thomas had raised her alone since her mother passed away in a car accident when she was only 5. Despite the hardship, they were happy. They shared inside jokes, built forts out of couch cushions, and watched old black and white movies together every Saturday night. To Thomas, Emily wasn't just his daughter, she was his world. Emily was smart, kind, and fiercely independent. She dreamed of becoming a writer one day, filling notebooks with stories about heroes, mysteries, and justice. She believed in people even when the world didn't always deserve it. But not all stories have happy beginnings. And this one, though beautiful at first, would soon turn into a nightmare that it started innocently enough. Emily joined the school drama club, a place where she thought she could finally fit in. She met new friends, or so she thought. Among them were 5 boys from wealthy families: Jordan Carlisle, Marcus Vance, Ethan Blake, Daniel Rourke, and Kyle Harper. They were popular, charming, and well-connected. Their parents were politicians, lawyers, and business tycoons. The town whispered their names with admiration, never suspecting what they were capable of. At first they were kind to Emily. They invited her to parties, gave her compliments, made her feel special. But behind closed doors the kindness turned to cruelty. One night, after a school event, they drugged her drink and took her to an abandoned cabin in the woods. That night marked the beginning of a living hell. For 3 years, Emily endured unspeakable horrors. The boys used her body like property, abusing her under threats and fear. If she resisted, they hurt her more. She cried, they laughed. If she tried to escape, they reminded her that no one would believe her anyway. The town saw her smiling face, unaware of the bruises hidden beneath her clothes. At home, she became quieter, withdrawn. She stopped writing. She stopped dreaming. Thomas noticed the change but didn't know how to reach her. He asked if something was wrong, but she always said everything was fine. Just growing up, she told him. He believed her. Because he wanted to. Because the alternative was unthinkable. One cold winter evening, Emily came home with bloodied lips and red eyes. Thomas rushed to her side, demanding answers, but she wouldn't speak. She locked herself in her room and didn't come out for 2 days. When she finally emerged, she looked like a ghost of herself. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Thomas held her close, rocking her gently. "You don't have to do anything alone. I'm here." Finally she spoke. She told him everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of pain. She named the boys. She described the cabin. She showed him the scars on her wrists where they'd tied her down. Thomas sat frozen, his entire world collapsing around him. Then he stood. "I'll fix this," he said. Thomas went straight to the police station the next morning. He filed a report, begged for help, demanded action. But the officer who took the statement barely looked up from his coffee. "Those are serious accusations," the man said. "Do you have proof?" Emily had nothing. No witnesses. No video. Just trauma. The officer sighed. "These kids come from powerful families. Without solid evidence, there's not much we can do." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. "Are you even listening? My daughter was raped for years." The officer shrugged. "Without cooperation from the girl and without evidence, we can't move forward." Emily refused to press charges. She was too afraid. Too broken. The case was closed before it ever began. Thomas returned home, shaking with rage. He found Emily curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. "They won't help us," he said softly. She nodded. "I told you. No one believes girls like me." He pulled her into his arms. "I believe you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "It doesn't matter. It's over." "No, it's not," he said. "Not yet." That night, Thomas sat by the window watching the snow fall. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge, of justice, of punishment. He knew the law wouldn't protect her. So he would. Thomas began watching the boys. He learned their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses. He followed them to parties, noted which alleys they walked through, how often they drank, how careless they became. He studied them like prey. Jordan Carlyle was the ringleader, charismatic, manipulative, and cruel. He enjoyed watching others suffer. Marcus Vance was the enforcer, strong and violent, the one who silenced dissent with fists. Ethan Blake was the brains, quiet, calculating, always thinking ahead. Daniel Rourke was the follower, eager to please, scared of being left out. Kyle Harper was the youngest, barely 17, still impressionable but already stained with guilt. Thomas memorized their lives. And he planned. Carefully. Methodically. This wouldn't be murder. This would be justice. 6 months later, Emily disappeared. Thomas found a note on her pillow. Dad, I'm sorry. I can't live like this anymore. Please don't blame yourself. I love you. She was gone. He screamed until his voice cracked. He collapsed to his knees. And then he remembered his promise. Justice. Vengeance. Revenge. He called the police. They searched. They found her body in the river 2 days later. Cause of death. Suicide. No one mourned except him. No one cared. Except him. And now no one would escape. Thomas buried Emily beside her mother. He wore a mask of grief in public, but beneath it lay a fire that couldn't be extinguished. He visited the cemetery every day, bringing fresh flowers and whispering promises. I'll make sure they pay, he told her gravestone. Every last one of them. He kept his head down, worked at the garage, smiled politely at customers. No one suspected a thing. But every night he trained. He studied poisons, knives, lockpicking, surveillance techniques. He bought equipment under fake names. He created false identities. He became invisible. A shadow in the dark. And he waited. For the perfect moment. It started with Jordan Carlyle. Thomas tracked him to a private party in the mountains. The boy was drunk, laughing, flirting with another young girl. Thomas waited outside in the cold. When Jordan stumbled out to urinate, Thomas struck. A syringe to the neck. A quick, silent dose of paralyzing agent. He dragged the unconscious boy to a waiting van. No one noticed. No one cared. Jordan woke up bound in a soundproof basement. Thomas stood before him. You remember my daughter? He asked. Jordan blinked, confused. She's dead, Thomas continued. Because of you. Realization hit. Panic followed. Then fear. Then silence. Time to confess, Thomas said, holding up a camera. Jordan screamed. Jordan Carlyle thrashed against the ropes binding his wrists and ankles to the wooden chair. His eyes darted around the dimly lit basement, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold air. Who the hell are you? He spat, trying to sound brave. Thomas stepped into the light, his face calm but his eyes burning with something Jordan couldn't name, something terrifying in its stillness. I told you, Thomas said. I'm Emily Ellery's father. Recognition hit like a punch to the gut. No, Jordan whispered. You're not real. This isn't happening. Oh, it is, Thomas replied, lifting a small digital camera. Now, I want you to confess everything. Every lie you told. Every time you hurt her. Every time you laughed while she cried. Jordan shook his head violently. You can't do this. My family will find me. Thomas smiled, cold and unfeeling. No, they won't. You disappeared tonight at the party. Someone saw you go out back to make a call. That's the last anyone saw of you. They'll know. Jordan shouted. They'll look for me. Thomas placed the camera on a tripod and turned it on. Then let's make sure they have something to see. He walked behind Jordan and pressed a knife to his throat. Start talking. The recording began. At first, Jordan denied everything. He called Thomas insane, threatened him with lawsuits, tried to bargain. But when Thomas carved a shallow line across his chest and held up the bloodied blade, Jordan broke. I did it, he whimpered. We all did. Thomas nodded. Tell them who you are. Tell them what you did to Emily. I'm Jordan Carlyle, Jordan said shakily. And we raped Emily Ellery. Over and over again. We started when she was 16. We drugged her, took her to the cabin in the woods. We tied her up. We made her scream. We made her cry. We made her feel like no one would believe her. And they didn't. Tears streamed down his face. And now she's dead, Thomas said softly. Because of you. Jordan sobbed. I didn't mean for her to die. You meant for her to suffer, Thomas said. That's enough. He pulled the hood over Jordan's head. Then he ended him. Quietly. Efficiently. Without hesitation. When it was done, Thomas cleaned up every trace. And uploaded the video to a secure server. One down. 4 to go. Marcus Vance was next. A former high school wrestler, he was built like a tank and twice as dangerous. Known for his temper, he enjoyed hurting people. Not just Emily but anyone who crossed him. Thomas knew brute force wouldn't work. Marcus was too strong, too alert. So he used fear. He planted false evidence linking Marcus to a string of burglaries. A backpack full of stolen goods was left outside his house. Surveillance footage, doctored, showed him entering and exiting various homes. The police picked him up within days. As soon as Marcus was arrested, Thomas had access. He bribed a corrupt guard to smuggle him inside under the guise of legal counsel. Once alone with Marcus in the interrogation room, Thomas sat calmly. "What the hell do you want?" Marcus growled. Thomas slid the photo of Emily across the table. Marcus paled. "She's dead," Thomas said. "Because of you." Before Marcus could respond, Thomas injected him with a fast-acting sedative. When he woke, he was in the same basement. Bound. Terrified. And the camera was already rolling. Marcus fought harder than Jordan. He cursed, screamed, threatened to kill Thomas if he ever got loose. Thomas remained silent, watching. Finally, after hours of resistance, Marcus wore himself out. "Why are you doing this?" he rasped. "Justice," Thomas said simply. Marcus spat. "You think this is justice? What the hell do you expect to gain?" Thomas leaned in close. "Peace." Marcus laughed bitterly. "You won't get it. Not from killing us." "No," Thomas agreed. "But maybe I'll finally stop hearing her screams in my sleep." Marcus flinched. Thomas pressed play on the recorder. "Your turn," he said. Marcus hesitated, then spoke. "I'm Marcus Vance. I was part of the group that raped Emily Ellery. I beat her when she resisted. I held her down. I watched her break." His voice cracked. "She was just a girl." Thomas cut him off. "You were worse than animals," he said. "You were cowards." He slipped the hood over Marcus's head and silenced him forever. Another confession recorded. Another monster erased. Ethan Blake was different. Unlike the others, he wasn't loud or violent. He was quiet, calculating, always thinking 5 steps ahead. Thomas knew he'd be the hardest to catch. So he waited. He studied Ethan's habits. Watched him graduate early, leave town for college, avoid attention. But Ethan was arrogant. He thought he was untouchable. Thomas proved otherwise. Using a fake identity, he posed as a private investigator hired by Emily's estate. He arranged a meeting with Ethan under the pretense of gathering information about her death. Ethan agreed, curious. He met Thomas in a hotel suite. It was over before he realized what happened. Thomas knocked him out with chloroform, bound him, and brought him home. This time Ethan didn't resist. He simply stared at Thomas. "You're her father?" he said quietly. Thomas nodded. Ethan sighed. "I knew this day would come." "You did nothing to stop it," Thomas said. "I never touched her the way the others did," Ethan said. "But I knew. I watched. I helped cover it up." Thomas lifted the camera. "Time to tell the truth." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'm Ethan Blake," he said to the lens. "I was part of the group that raped Emily Ellery. I planned how to isolate her. I helped hide the evidence. I convinced the others that no one would believe her." He looked directly into the camera. "And I was right." Thomas clenched his jaw. Ethan continued. "I never physically hurt her. But I made sure the pain lasted longer than it should have." Thomas asked, "Why?" Ethan shrugged. "Because I could." Thomas stared at him for a long moment. Then he covered Ethan's head and pulled the trigger. Just like that. No struggle. No fight. Only silence. 3 down. 2 to go. Daniel Rourke was the follower. He didn't start it. He didn't lead it. But he was there. He participated. And he knew better. Thomas found him working at his father's construction company. He was married now, with a young daughter of his own. He seemed normal. Happy even. Until Thomas showed up. Daniel panicked the moment he saw Emily's photo. He dropped to his knees, sobbing. "I didn't want to," he wailed. "I swear. They made me do it." Thomas crouched beside him. "They made you?" he repeated. "You could have walked away." Daniel shook his head. "I was scared." "So was she," Thomas said. "But she didn't have the luxury of walking away." He dragged Daniel into the van. To the basement. To the camera. "Confess," Thomas ordered. Daniel did. "I'm Daniel Rourke," he cried. "I was part of the group that raped Emily Ellery. I didn't touch her as much as the others. But I was there. I heard her scream. I saw the bruises. I knew it was wrong. But I stayed." He sobbed uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Thomas said nothing. He put the hood on Daniel and ended him. 4 down. 1 left. Kyle Harper was only 17 when it started. Still impressionable. Still naive. But he grew up in the shadow of monsters. Thomas almost felt pity. Almost. But Kyle had made a choice. He could have stopped it. Instead, he became one of them. Thomas tracked him to a boarding school in Switzerland. He flew there under a fake passport. Posed as a visiting scholar. Found Kyle alone in the library. Gave him a drink. Waited. When Kyle woke up, he was in the basement too. He trembled. "Please," he begged. "I was just a kid." "You're not a kid anymore," Thomas said. "You're a man who helped destroy another." Kyle wept. "I wanted to stop it. I tried once. They threatened me." Thomas handed him a script. "Read it," he said. Kyle obeyed. "I'm Kyle Harper. I was part of the group that raped Emily Ellery. I was the youngest. I didn't understand what I was doing at first. But I kept going because I was afraid. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Thomas lowered the camera. Kyle looked up. "Will it help her?" "No," Thomas said. "But it might help someone else." He placed the hood. And finished Kyle. 5 confessions. 5 deaths. Justice served. Thomas sat in front of the camera one last time. He uploaded the final video. 5 separate files. Each containing a full confession. Each signed with the boys' names. He sent them to news outlets. To the police. To the families. To the world. And then he deleted all traces from his devices. He stood at Emily's grave. "This is for you," he whispered. "I did it." He kissed the stone. And walked away. The town exploded in outrage. Protests. Investigations. Calls for justice. But the boys were already gone. The families denied everything at first. Then the videos surfaced. The truth was undeniable. But no one could figure out who did it. There was no DNA. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Just 5 dead bodies and 5 chilling confessions. The police searched endlessly. They questioned everyone. But Thomas remained untouched. He grieved publicly. Spoke fondly of his daughter. Offered statements to the press. Everyone pitied him. No one suspected him. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Emily's legacy lived on. And her tormentors? Gone. Forever? The videos spread like wildfire. Within hours, every major news outlet had picked up the story. The town of Brookridge was thrown into chaos. Parents who once praised the boys as future leaders now wept in horror. Students whispered in hallways, teachers canceled classes, and the local church held emergency vigils. Emily Ellery's name became a symbol of pain, of justice denied, and now of something darker. But no one knew what to make of the deaths. 5 young men gone in such a short time. No signs of struggle. No evidence of forced entry. Just cold, clinical execution. And confessions so raw they made even hardened detectives shudder. People began asking questions. Who could have done this? What? And most importantly, was it justice or revenge? The Carlyles withdrew from public life entirely. Jordan's funeral was closed to the press, but rumors swirled that his father had threatened legal action against the media for defaming his son's memory. Marcus Vance's mother collapsed at his funeral. His father refused to speak to reporters, but was seen arguing with Ethan Blake's family days later. Ethan's parents were the only ones to issue a public apology. "We are devastated by the truth," they said in a statement. "We never knew our son was capable of such evil." Daniel Rourke's wife filed for divorce within the week. She took their daughter and moved out of state. Kyle Harper's boarding school released a formal statement condemning the actions of all 5 boys, while quietly removing Kyle's name from their honor roll. None of them would be remembered fondly. Only feared. Only mourned by those who didn't know the truth. Thomas watched it all unfold from the safety of his garage. He kept working, kept smiling politely when customers came in. But inside something had changed. He thought killing them would bring peace. Instead he felt hollow. Every night he replayed the recordings in his head, not the videos but the memories. Emily's laughter. Her smile. The way she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. Now replaced by screams. Not hers. Theirs. He hadn't realized how much blood would stain him. Even if it was for her, Detective Laura Simmons wasn't like the others. She had joined the force not for politics or prestige, but because she believed in justice. Real justice. Not the kind buried under wealth and influence. When Emily's case was closed without investigation, she'd fought to reopen it. But her superiors shut her down. Now, with the confessions and the deaths, she saw a chance to finally do something right. She started digging. Cross-referenced old reports. Looked into missing persons timelines. Reviewed security footage from around the town. And slowly a pattern emerged. Each boy disappeared shortly after being seen near the same area. A van. Always black. Always unmarked. A man. Never clearly visible. And always alone. Someone planned this. Carefully. Methodically. And she was going to find out who. Thomas noticed the detective watching him. At first it was subtle. A glance too long, a question asked twice. Then she visited his shop. "Mr. Ellery," she said, flashing her badge. "I just wanted to offer my condolences again. And ask a few follow-up questions about your daughter's case." Thomas smiled kindly. "Of course." She asked about Emily's last days. About any enemies she might have had. About whether Thomas had ever confronted anyone. He answered carefully, keeping his voice steady. Finally she stood. "Thank you for your time." As she left, she glanced back. Just once. But it was enough. Thomas knew she was onto him. And he needed to be careful. Very careful. Weeks passed. The town tried to move on. But then something strange happened. A new video surfaced. It was short. Only 30 seconds. But it showed Emily. Alive. Smiling. Sitting at her desk. Writing. The caption read, "This is Emily Ellery. This is who she was before they destroyed her." It went viral. People cried. Students organized memorials. Artists painted murals in her honor. And someone else watched. From afar. Thomas. He stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face. He hadn't posted it. Someone else had. Someone who knew. And now they were speaking for Emily. In a way he never could. The memorial drew hundreds. Emily's face was projected onto the side of the high school. Students shared stories. Teachers spoke of her kindness. Parents wept. And Thomas stood in the back, unnoticed. He heard whispers. "I wish I had known her. She deserved better. She should have been protected." His chest tightened. He had done everything to protect her. Too late. But still. He had avenged her. Hadn't he? Then why did he feel like a monster? Detective Simmons got closer. She traced the van used in the disappearances to an auto shop that had recently sold several vehicles under cash transactions. One of the buyers matched Thomas's description. She dug deeper. Found records of purchases made in different names, chemicals, tools, surveillance equipment. She cross-referenced it with Thomas's financial history. Nothing suspicious. Until she found a transfer of funds from an offshore account. Small amounts. Enough to cover expenses. Enough to stay invisible. Enough to raise red flags. She brought her findings to her captain. He dismissed her. "This isn't your job anymore," he said. "Let it go." But she wouldn't. Not yet. Thomas knew he was being followed. He saw the same car parked outside his house for 3 nights straight. He spotted the detective watching him from across the street. He changed routines. Wore different clothes. Used alternate routes. And still she was there. Waiting. Watching. Probing. Thomas considered disappearing. Fleeing the town. Starting over somewhere else. But he couldn't leave Emily. Not yet. Not until he was sure her legacy lived on. Not until he knew no one else would suffer the way she did. So instead he prepared. For whatever came next. Because he knew one thing for certain. Laura Simmons wasn't going away. One evening, Thomas returned home to find his garage door open. Inside, his tools were scattered. His office drawers pulled open. His laptop gone. He froze. Then he ran to the basement. Empty. The ropes were cut. The camera was missing. The tapes. Gone. His heart pounded. Someone had been here. Someone had taken everything. And they knew. They knew. Thomas fell to his knees. His plan. His proof. His confession. All gone. And now someone else had the power. To expose him. Or finish what he started. Thomas sat on the basement floor, heart pounding. The tapes were gone. His evidence, gone. His work, exposed. He scanned the room for signs of forced entry. Nothing. Whoever had taken them knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't just snooping, they were hunting. He stood slowly, wiped the sweat from his brow, and walked upstairs. Every instinct told him he wasn't safe anymore. He grabbed a suitcase, packed essentials, and locked the house behind him. He didn't look back. Not yet. There was still one thing left to do. Find whoever had taken the tapes. And silence them. 3 days later, Thomas received an anonymous email. "I know what you did. Meet me at the old train station. Midnight. Come alone. No name. No signature. Just a time. A place. Thomas hesitated only briefly before deciding to go. He arrived early, dressed in black, armed with a knife and a silenced pistol. The station was abandoned, its windows shattered, walls covered in graffiti. At midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, young, dressed in all black. She stepped into the dim light and looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not here to turn you in," she said. "I'm here to help." Thomas didn't lower his guard. "Who are you?" "My name is Claire Harper." Recognition hit like a punch to the gut. Claire. Kyle Harper's older sister. Claire stared at Thomas without fear. "You killed my brother," she said. Thomas didn't deny it. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I watched the video. I heard his confession." She took a breath. "I believe him." Thomas tensed. "Then why am I still standing?" Claire smiled faintly. "Because I don't think you're the monster they're looking for." Thomas blinked. "What are you saying?" "I've been watching you," she said. "Since Kyle disappeared. I started digging. I found things no one else did." She pulled out a folder and handed it to him. Inside were photos, maps, notes, everything she had compiled on the boys, including the truth about Kyle. "He was afraid of them," she whispered. "He wanted to stop. But they wouldn't let him." She looked up. "You gave him a chance to speak. That's more than anyone else ever did." Thomas exhaled. "So what now?" Claire smirked. "Now we finish what you started." Claire had been tracking someone else. Someone connected to the disappearances. A man named Alan Rourke, Daniel's father. He had hired private investigators to find out what happened to his son. But something else troubled Claire. Alan had recently purchased land near the cabin where Emily had been abused. A new development. Or a cover-up. Thomas listened carefully as Claire laid out her theory. "They're trying to erase everything," she said. "Even the places where it happened." Thomas clenched his jaw. "They won't get away with it." Claire handed him a file. Inside was a list of names. Wealthy men. Politicians. Lawyers. All connected to the boys. All involved in silencing the truth. Thomas looked at Claire. "You want to help me take them down?" She nodded. "I want justice." Alan Rourke was their first target. Thomas and Claire followed him for days. They learned his routine. His habits. His weaknesses. He frequented a private club every Friday night. No cameras inside. No witnesses. Perfect. On the chosen night, Thomas posed as a waiter while Claire waited outside. Inside, Alan drank heavily, laughing with other men about business deals and old money. Thomas approached with a drink. Slipped a sedative into the glass. Waited. 15 minutes later, Alan stumbled toward the exit. Claire was waiting. She helped him into the car. No one noticed. No one cared. He woke up in the same basement where the boys had once confessed. Bound. Terrified. And facing Thomas Ellery. Thomas turned on the camera. Alan squinted against the bright light. "Who the hell are you?" he growled. Thomas leaned forward. "I'm Thomas Ellery. Emily's father." Alan paled. "No, not again?" "Oh yes," Thomas said coldly. "Again." He held up a tablet. "Your son confessed to raping my daughter. Now I want you to tell the truth." Alan shook his head. "I didn't do anything." "But you knew," Thomas said. "You knew what your son was capable of. And you did nothing." Alan trembled. "I didn't know the extent." Thomas slammed his fist on the table. "That's not good enough." Claire stepped forward. "Tell the world what you knew. What you ignored. What you allowed." Alan hesitated. Then he spoke. "I'm Alan Rourke. My son Daniel was part of the group that raped Emily Ellery. I suspected something was wrong, but I convinced myself it was teenage nonsense. I didn't want to believe my own child could be capable of such evil." He broke down. "I failed her. I failed my son. I failed everyone." Thomas turned off the camera. Then he ended Alan. Quietly. Efficiently. Without hesitation. Another link in the chain broken. Another truth exposed. More names surfaced. More connections. The corruption ran deeper than Thomas had imagined. Claire uncovered records of bribes paid to local officials. Police reports that mysteriously vanished. Medical records that were altered or destroyed. This wasn't just about 5 boys. It was about an entire system built to protect the powerful. Thomas realized the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Claire agreed. Together they compiled a dossier. Names. Evidence. Confessions. Proof of corruption. They called it Project Justice. And they would release it piece by piece. until the truth couldn't be ignored. The first leak came quietly. An anonymous post on a local forum. Attached was Alan Rourke's confession. Within hours it went viral. News outlets picked it up. The police scrambled. Detective Simmons saw it and immediately connected it to her earlier suspicions. She dug deeper. Found links between Alan's death and the boys' deaths. Patterns. Timelines. Connections. And then, a name. Thomas Ellery. Her stomach dropped. She had suspected. Now she had reason. She gathered her files. Went to her captain. Thomas knew it was only a matter of time. Detective Simmons was getting too close. He watched her from a distance. Saw her speaking to people. Asking questions. Following leads. Claire warned him. "We need to move fast," she said. "Before she gets to us." Thomas agreed. They had one more target. One final link in the chain. Judge Harold Carlyle. Jordan Carlyle's uncle. The man who had ensured the original case was dismissed. The man who had protected the boys. Now he would face judgment. Real judgment. Not the kind written in law books. The kind written in blood. Judge Carlyle was untouchable until now. Thomas and Claire crafted a plan. Fake credentials. A forged subpoena. A court hearing scheduled under false pretenses. Carlyle showed up unaware. Inside the courtroom, Thomas waited. Claire filmed. The moment Carlyle entered, Thomas struck. Injected. Bound. Taken. To the same basement. Same chair. Same camera. Carlyle begged. Pleaded. Threatened lawsuits. Thomas remained silent. Finally he leaned in. "Say your name." Carlyle spat. "Harold Carlyle." Thomas nodded. "Now confess." Carlyle hesitated. Then spoke. "I'm Judge Harold Carlyle. I knew about the rape allegations against my nephew and his friends. I used my influence to ensure the case was never pursued. I buried the evidence. I silenced the victim. I allowed these boys to continue their crimes unchecked." He paused. "I regret it." Thomas stared at him. Too late. He pulled the hood. And ended him. The last confession recorded. The last thread tied. Justice at last. Thomas sat alone in the dim light of the basement. Judge Carlyle's body was gone. The room was clean. The tapes were secured. 5 boys. 5 families. 1 judge. All exposed. He stared at the camera one last time. Then he deleted everything from his devices. Claire stood behind him. "It's done," she whispered. Thomas nodded. "I know." But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was emptiness. A void carved by years of pain, vengeance, and blood. And now the world was watching. Waiting. And someone knew the truth. Someone who wouldn't stop. Laura Simmons. Detective Laura Simmons moved quickly. She compiled everything. Financial records, surveillance footage, witness statements, forensic reports. She presented her findings to the chief. "This isn't just about 5 missing boys anymore," she said. "There's a pattern. A method. And I believe Thomas Ellery is responsible." The chief frowned. "You have no physical evidence." "I have motive," Laura countered. "I have opportunity. I have behavioral patterns. I have inconsistencies in his timeline." She leaned forward. "And I have reason to believe more people are going to die unless we stop him now." The chief hesitated. "Go ahead," he finally said. "Bring him in." Laura nodded. This time, there would be no escape. Thomas knew it was only a matter of time before they came for him. He had taken down powerful men. Exposed corruption. Destroyed lives. And now the law was closing in. Claire warned him. "They're coming," she said. "Tonight." Thomas didn't panic. He had planned for this. He cleaned the house. Wiped all traces of the operation. Left nothing behind. Except a letter. To Emily. And a final message. For whoever found it. He kissed her photo. Then he walked out the back door. Disappearing into the night. Detective Laura Simmons led the raid on Thomas's home. SWAT teams stormed the house. They found nothing. No bodies. No weapons. No evidence. Only a single note on the kitchen table. "If you've read this, then I'm already gone. I did what the law refused to do. I gave my daughter justice. I gave the world truth. Now you decide what happens next." Signed, T. Ellery. Laura stared at the note. Her hands trembled. She believed him. She believed every word. But she also knew what he'd done was wrong. Even if it felt right. Even if it was deserved. She turned to her team. "Find him," she ordered. "Now." Claire watched from a distance as police swarmed Thomas's house. She had the files. The confessions. The proof. She could release them, expose everything, or destroy them. Protect Thomas. Let history remember him as a grieving father, not a killer. She sat in her car, heart pounding. She owed him her brother's truth, but she also owed the world its justice. She made her decision. She pulled out her phone, typed an anonymous email, attached the final confession video of Judge Carlisle, sent it to every major news outlet. Then she drove away, leaving the past behind, letting the truth speak for itself. The videos went viral. Within hours, Brookridge was in chaos. The mayor resigned. 2 judges stepped down. Several high-ranking officials were arrested. The town was forced to confront its darkest secret. Its justice system had protected predators, failed victims, allowed monsters to thrive. Emily Ellery's name became a symbol of resistance. Her story sparked protests, legislation changes, calls for reform. Claire watched from afar, smiling, knowing her brother had played a part in breaking the silence, and knowing Thomas had made it possible. Laura Simmons found Thomas at the cemetery. He was kneeling at Emily's grave, head bowed, hands clasped, as if praying. She approached slowly, gun holstered, voice steady. "Mr. Ellery," she said. "It's over." Thomas didn't move. "She deserves better than revenge," Laura continued. "She deserves the truth." Thomas looked up. "She got both," he said softly. Laura knelt beside him. "You took 5 lives," she said. "And you ended a corrupt system. But you crossed a line." Thomas met her gaze. "I didn't cross it," he said. "I erased it." Laura exhaled. "I have to take you in." Thomas stood. "I know." He held out his wrists. No struggle. No fight. Just acceptance. Laura cuffed him. And together they walked away. From the grave. From the past. Toward whatever came next. Thomas Ellery's trial was unlike any other. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Victims' families. Former students. The town watched as the man who had avenged Emily Ellery faced judgment. Prosecutors argued premeditated murder. Defense attorneys pleaded moral justification. Laura Simmons testified. So did Claire Harper. The confessions were played. The videos shown. The world listened. And when the verdict came, life in prison without parole. Justice according to the law. But mercy according to the people. In prison, Thomas remained silent. He never apologized. Never regretted. But he accepted his fate. Because he had done what needed to be done. Years passed. Brookridge changed. New laws were passed. Schools taught consent classes. Victims were believed. Emily's legacy lived on. Every year, students gathered at her grave, placed flowers, lit candles, read poetry, and remembered the girl who suffered, and the father who made sure no one else ever would. On the day Thomas died, the prison was quiet. He passed peacefully in his sleep. Heart failure. His cellmate found him the next morning. So serene, with a small photo clutched in his hand. Emily, smiling, laughing, alive. When the news broke, the town mourned. Not the killer, but the father. Claire attended his funeral. So did dozens of strangers. People who had been saved because of what he did. Because of what he sacrificed. At the end of the service, Claire placed a single white rose on his coffin, whispered a prayer, and walked away, knowing one thing. True justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a father's love.